There are less than 1 trillion galaxies in the known universe that scientists have found. Each galaxy has approximately 100 billion stars. So the entire known universe is less than, if you wrote on a marker board, 1 trillion times 100 billion stars that could have planetary systems. So you just multiply all those zeros. 1 trillion galaxies less than times 100 billion or so stars equals how many possibilities we have to have a planetary system like ours. Scientists of our world observe the parameters of life. In fact, 46 years ago, when we started the manned space program, just like the Chinese who orbited someone recently, they had to devise a system where everything that was necessary for life could be put together so that these astronauts could exist outside of the planet. And it was very complex, and they had to think about it. Do you remember how Apollo whatever burned up because they had too much oxygen? Do you remember all that? When you change things, life doesn't make it. And so it has to be delicately balanced. Well, what are those parameters? Well, there are hundreds, probably thousands of different elements needed to sustain human life. But let me just list off the ones that scientists have come up with so far. Okay? And these are complex, and they reflect divine design. Even the scientists, they don't say it this way, but what they say is, it's amazing how exactly the Earth has all of these systems operating together to perpetuate life here on the planet. Life on Earth, scientists have observed, is tied to our sun, the moon, and the galaxy in which we live, not just this planet. The following scientific parameters of a planet, its moon, its star, and its galaxy that must have values that fall within a narrowly defined range for life to exist. Number one, our solar system. It's amazingly, precisely, perfectly designed for supporting life on Earth. Consider the number of stars in our planetary system. We are not a binary system. We don't have a, kind of like Alderaan or wherever, where you see the two out there when Luke is out there. The number of stars, if there was more than one star in our solar system, the tidal interactions would disrupt our planetary orbit. In other words, there would be too much gravitational tug for us at our 93.1 million mile distance that it would affect our planet too much, a double star. And if there was no sun, there wouldn't be sufficient heat or light, and so it's important to have one. But our sun itself is amazingly, precisely, perfectly designed to support life. The age of our sun, if it was older, it would probably be changing. It would be declining too quickly. If it was younger, it would be changing in the other direction too quickly. Its light, its luminosity, they call it, would be altering too much. How about the mass, the actual totality of our sun? If it had a greater mass, again, it would burn too rapidly. If it had less mass, it would be too small. It would be not enough heat at 93 million miles and light to sustain life. How about the color of our star? There are all different colors out there of stars. If it was redder, we have what they call a yellow star, the photosynthetic response of life in plants would be insufficient. If it was bluer, the photosynthetic response in plants would be insufficient and life wouldn't go on. It has to be yellow like it is. How about its luminosity to receive relative to the reflectivity? If it was too much light hitting the Earth, not reflecting off, we would have a runaway greenhouse. We would be like Mercury or Venus. You see what they're like? They're kind of like living in a pressure cooker. It's just too hot for life. If it was less, we would have runaway glaciation. The whole planet would be frozen because too much light would reflect off and it wouldn't be absorbed. Now let's look at the Earth itself. Get by the sun. Our planet is amazingly, precisely, perfectly designed to support life. Our surface gravity, that's the escape velocity, how fast you have to get for something to get off the surface, it's perfect for life. If there was a stronger surface gravity, our atmosphere would retain too much ammonia and methane. It would be kind of like being perpetually over, when we got into our apartment, we got vanished and dumped it in, and I was down there like this, and man, that'll knock you out. That stuff foaming up in your face. The whole planet would have that ammonia, methane, chlorine kind of stuff. It wouldn't be able to escape. If the surface gravity was too little, if it was weaker, we would lose our water. Our water vapor would just drift off into the universe and we would slowly become a desert. How about the distance from our sun that our planet is? It's perfect for life. If we were further away, it'd be too cold. If we were closer, it would be too hot, and the water cycle wouldn't be stable. How about this one? I love it. The axial tilt. You know, the Earth is got like a axis through the middle of it. If it was tilted different than it is, you know, sometimes we wonder, oh, that's interesting. We're tilted like that, and we straighten it. You know, I remember the first time I went to school, the globe was like that, and I thought, I don't want to tip over. Well, God tipped us like that. It's perfect for life. If we had a greater axial tilt, the surface temperature differences would be too great for life. If it was less, the surface temperatures would be too great for life. God made it just perfectly on the right tilt so that the sun is hitting us and we are exactly in the right position to maintain life. How about our rotation period? How long it takes for the Earth to rotate. It's perfect for life. If it was longer, the diurnal temperature differences would be too great between night and day. If it was shorter, the atmospheric wind velocities would be too great. We would have F10s instead of F5s, and life would not continue on the planet. Even that little thing of our rotation period. How about the magnetic fields? You know, we see sometimes the aurora borealis in the north, and we think about all that, but we don't consider the fact that the magnetic field that the Lord put around the earth is perfect for life. If it was a stronger magnetic field, we would have such strong electromagnetic thunderstorms that no one would be able to escape them. It would just be going, and it would kill everybody if our magnetic field was stronger. But if it was weaker magnetic field out there, the ozone shield and life on the land would be inadequately protected from the hard stellar solar radiation. You see, it's like a force field out there keeping us from the cosmic forces that are coming from the sun. But if it was too much, we would get fried by the electromagnetic storms. And then I could go through the rest, but I want to bore you. The thickness of our crust, how much oxygen is retained, the inclination of orbit, the oxygen to nitrogen ratio in the atmosphere. How about the CO2 level in the atmosphere? It's perfect for life. The water vapor level, the atmospheric electric discharge rate, the ozone levels, oxygen quantity, seismic activity. I mean, there's just enough, but there's not too much, just enough to make us realize that nothing is stable, but it's not so much that it's like Revelation 16 where it just kills everybody. The soil mineralization, the global distribution of continents. I thought about this. You know, you remember when you had to make maps that most of them are in the northern hemisphere and they're not mostly in the southern hemisphere? And I thought, well, I'd move them around so we'd have more tropical areas, so we could all have beach property. Wow, that's not, God knew better than that. If there's too much in the southern hemisphere, the seasonal temperature differences would be too severe for advanced life. The whole continent distribution affects our weather and the way that the oceans operate and the streams. The gravitational interaction with the moon. If the moon was bigger or closer, we would have tides that would sweep across the continents. Isn't it? It's really wonderful. It's at the right distance and the right size, or we'd really be in trouble. But each of these 23 that I listed, parameters, cannot exceed certain very precise limits. You move any of those. You move the tilt, you move the speed, you move the CO2 ratio just minutely. And you have what's happening during the tribulation. You know what God does in the tribulation? He just moves all the levers a little bit. Turns the sun up. People start frying. Turns the sun down. Scares them to death. He turns the levels in the ocean up. All the creatures die. You see how exactly precise He maintains this planet? It's amazing to think about. By the way, there are dozens of other parameters that I didn't even talk about that would make this equation bigger. The mantle, the core, the pressure of our atmosphere, et cetera, et cetera. But just on the 23 that I just read off real quickly, what are the chances of life forming on a planet by chance and finding a life-supporting planet? Well, we can say with nearly statistical and mathematical certainty that only much fewer than a trillionth of a percent of all star systems could have a planet that is exactly tuned like ours. That's just taking these 23, looking at the at the field, looking at the variables of all the different kinds of stars and all the different planets and their distances and everything, a trillionth of a trillionth of a percent of a hundredth. Only that many could develop. Well, that gives us a real problem, because the observable universe contains only 1 trillion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars. So we can see that not even one planet would be expected by natural processes alone to have and possess the necessary conditions for life like we have here. These factors would seem to indicate that the galaxy, the sun, and the earth and the moon, in addition to the universe, have undergone divine design. And if divine design exists at that level, which is a simpler level, can you imagine how much divine design is in us? So that all of our systems work? You ever had one of your systems not work? I mean, it's amazing how, they say, oh, you got to have a little blood thinner, so you don't have a stroke. And all of a sudden you start bleeding everywhere. Oh, we gave you too much. Let's back that up. Do you see why they call it the practice of medicine? I mean, it is amazing how complicated we are. And that's why the scientific accuracy of the only eyewitness account of creation is so vital to each of us. Within the Bible, we find all there is. God, the universe He made, and the end that He describes. And we need to trust Him. God has spoken. His words are true. Everything encompassed in those words. From God's Word flows the guidelines God has given for us to meet Him, to know Him personally and go through life, and to please Him in our personal life, in our marriage, in our family, at work, until our last breath. Genesis is the foundation for everything.